We were stacked up like breaking.
Alright, so somebody tell me about the case.
It's the hospital with 600 beds, 45,000 patients admission each year.
Alright.
Through the emergency department. Which come, well, half of them come through the emergency department.
Let's stop right there. So we know, or I hope you know this, 600 is a large hospital. And 45,000 is a pretty high volume if we're talking about ED admissions. So that alone should tell you it's a big hospital, it's busy, fast paced. How much do you guys know about trauma centers?
All the levels. What level were they?
Yeah, there's different levels of trauma centers. They were tertiary.
They were what?
Tertiary.
So is that a level?
That's level 3, right?
Yeah, 3. Trauma centers have different levels based on what type of patients they can take in, and the levels kind of align with the acuity of the patient, how sick they are. Like if you're a burn patient, you can only go to certain trauma centers,
Right?
Versus
Because the staffing is specialized
the
for
staffing as well as the physicians.
So like they burn, they used to go to the UNC burn center.
And that's probably because they're a level, you know, a certain level trauma center. You have to send certain patients to certain level trauma centers. So it says here that this is a highly specialized tertiary referral and trauma center. So again, this is a very busy hospital, lots of volume. So I want to make sure that was clear. All right, keep going. Or somebody keep going.
The factors are, in this case, would be.
Well, let's keep going through the case first.
Oh.
Give me a brief overview of what's going on, and then we'll get to the factors.
The patient was admitted for breathing problems.
Okay.
They ran tests and decided to admit him, but we're.
So basically, we had a patient that was admitted through the ED, right?
Right.
For breathing problems, and it appears that there was supposed to be some handoffs done, right?
Multiple handoffs within the ED.
Right.
Handoff over the phone.
But they weren't done, correct?
Right.
All right. So now let's get into the factors. There obviously were a lot of factors that contributed to the problem in this case. So let's talk about, or let's list some of the factors that you came up with that contributed to the problem.
So one of them be he handed them off over the phone and then follow up. Hand off the patient.
So he handed off the patient over the phone, but didn't follow up.
That's what I think.
All right, so handoff. Is this Dr. Are you talking about Dr. Henderson?
He's the ED physician. No, Dr. Henderson, she was a hospital doctor. This is Dr. Clark, I believe, was in
Okay, so
that.
this is Dr. Clark handing off over the phone to
The resident, he handed them off to the residents that afternoon, and Dr. Henderson didn't come in until the next morning.
Yeah.
All right, so there's our first factor. Let's keep going. Hand off over the phone, no follow up.
Okay.
The fact that boarded patients are physically out of sight.
Boarded patients are, you mean in the hallway?
Yeah.
Well, either in the basement.
So
Right.
boarded patients.
On this one, it says that they're out of sight in the hallways that aren't.
Boarded patients in the hallway. All right, what else?
The night residents never reported the admission of Mr. what's his name, Saunders, to Dr. Henderson when she come in at 7 a.m. that morning.
So the night resident never reported the admission.
Right.
Right. They handed off 2 other new patients that morning, but they did not hand
Sanders
off
wasn't on the
Mr.
list.
Saunders.
Okay, what else?
The cardio nor pulmonary wanted to take responsibility for the patient.
Pulmonary unit didn't want to take responsibility. But are they the only ones?
Cardiac, cardiologist.
Cardio and pulmonary.
There we go. So cardio and pulmonary didn't want to take responsibility.
That's why he was not handed off, because he was still in a holding stage to see who was going to take him.
All right, what else?
So this is where Dr. Henderson comes aboard, right? And she's trying to find the patient, and so she finally called Dr. Clark. Am I right? Yo, we've
Dr. Lee.
called
Dr. Lee, the resident.
Dr. Lee was the resident,
Okay.
the nighttime resident that was supposed to do the handoff.
And she called him the next day.
Okay, Dr. Lee.
But that's not a factor, is it? Or is it a factor?
No, I was just bringing you up to
Okay.
speed where we are, right? And all that's my
Same
team
resident.
members, are we on the same page?
Any more factors though?
Okay.
We need more factors?
I mean, if that's it, then that's it.
I'm thinking that's probably about it.
That's it.
Well, too many patients, not enough staff, let's see what else.
Patient volume.
Too many handoffs within the emergency department in general, not just to the floors.
All right. Anything else?
No computer records, everything was done over the phone.
Yeah.
Telephone. What else? Is that it? All right. So these are, all definitely contributing factors to what happened. We'll start with the first one, with the handoff over the phone. These two kind of link together, where you were talking about the telephone. What happens when we do things over the phone?
There's no paper trail, there's no record.
There's no paper trail, no record, no documentation. Even when people call me sometimes and ask me to do something, I forget it.
Right.
Because you're doing so many things. And so this handoff over telephone didn't have any follow-up. It could have been because it was over the phone, right?
Actually, I think part of it was over a pager.
So how might we be able to prevent that?
Email, the
Correct.
records, medical, what is it? EMR.
Right, and I'm not saying that the telephone is wrong, because in this day and time, a lot of doctors on call do receive calls by telephone. But what may need to happen is we call them, we follow up with an email or charting,
Flow chart.
document in the charts what has happened, so that if for whatever reason they do forget or they don't follow up over the phone based on the phone call, there's other ways that we can see what happened. It's documented, right?
Right.
Okay. Board of patients in the hallway. Has anybody ever been in the ED and seen this? You have.
I have seen it.
Done it.
And you have, right? You two haven't. This
You
is
never
more
seen
common
one call?
than you think.
Okay,
I try not to go there.
oh, I was gonna say, that's
So this happens. Board of patients in the hallways, it happens. This is not, out of the ordinary. This isn't a ridiculous case. It happens. So knowing that, again, looking at number 2, how can we improve this?
better records of the boarded patients, maybe a board of just boarded patients, a whiteboard of how the patients are charted.
So you're saying better records.
Better record updates, more frequent checks on the status of the boarded patient.
Okay. And you think, are there any other ways that we can, sure that's gonna help, but are there any other ways that we can physically, there's a reason they're in the hallway, right?
Not enough
Well, because
beds.
there's not enough beds.
Right.
And
So
then-
that's gonna mean we need to improve our throughput.
Turnover in here.
Because right now we're having bottleneck, right? Because everybody's in the hallways. So sure, improving the records is gonna help, but we're gonna have to communicate with the people on the floors
Right.
to see what's causing them not to turn over their beds, because we can't move them out of the ED.
Right.
So this is gonna have to be a collaborative effort among more than just the ED. It may be an issue with a shortage of patient transporters, we don't know. But this is something we're gonna have to bring other departments into to try to help us physically move the patients out of the hallways, right?
Okay.
All right, night resident never responded, or never reported the admission. What are we gonna do about that?
Why are they, I mean, don't they have like doctors in the hospital at night and not just residents? I mean, should they even be responsible for doing handoffs?
A resident can be responsible for doing a handoff. Typically, most residents have a physician overseeing them.
You're gonna
But shouldn't he go-
you're gonna address why he left work without handing off a patient, for one.
Right, definitely.
And why he didn't respond, communicate with the physicians over him.
Right. Well, and we probably need to look into the person that's overseeing the resident, because there may have been something that was, somebody dropped the ball there as well. So maybe tighter observation over the residents, because obviously this resident dropped the ball, right? Let's talk about it. This one I think is important, because as somebody said, had one of these departments taken responsibility,
He wouldn't have been sitting there.
right?
Right.
So, and I think it's interesting that not just one,
But two.
but two departments both said,
No, we don't want to.
I don't have time for this.
He
So,
came in for pulmonary, but when they did
The
the
EKG.
EKG, cardio should have also,
so
somebody should have taken.
first, which department do you think should have been the appropriate
The one,
department?
the one he
pulmonary.
was admitted for, shortness of breath, that's why he was
Right,
admitted.
so
to
this
the
really
hospital.
was pulmonary's,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
responsibility. And while they tried to push it over to cardiology, again, had cardiology said, okay, we'll take him, he still wouldn't have been sitting there. But it really should have been pulmonary. So what are we going to do about these departments not wanting to take patients?
That puzzled me about the departments wouldn't take him.
Well-
Because he was a priority. I mean, if he, evidently something's going wrong with his breathing and his shorter breath, wouldn't that make him a priority? When you go into the ER, don't they place you on the severity of your care, of your acute care?
I think it's important, we would have to know a little bit more about these departments and what they have going on. Because do you think that they were just full to capacity and that's why they didn't take them? Or were they just being lazy?
I think there's like some animosity, there's some kind of, something between the physicians.
Or there's, you know, something underlying, some past history?
Could they have
in a
sent a
personal
respiratory
relationship?
therapy down there to check on that patient?
Possibly. So, there's a lot of things we have to look at here, and I think this one's important because it's probably issues like this that are causing the bottleneck. And it may not just be these two departments. It could be therapy, it could be imaging, all having the same type of issues with other departments causing a bottleneck. So if you think about it, it may not even be a physical factor. It may just be relationship conflicts that's causing a bottleneck of the entire hospital. You see how beef or, you know, conflict within two departments that may not have anything with them physically doing their job, how that can affect the entire hospital.
But it's really affecting that patient because
It's
if they
affecting the
die,
patient too.
at the bottom line, the patient is the one that's going to be suffering
Right.
because of these conflicts.
So I think for this one, a lot of examination would have to be done to see why nobody wants to take responsibility and why they weren't thinking about the bigger picture or why they weren't thinking about the patient and the quality of the patient's care
Yeah,
here.
absolutely.
So that was important. That's why I put a star by it. Patient volume in ED, definitely a factor, right? In the beginning of the case, they basically told us it was a busy hospital, 600 bed, 45,000 admissions. So in a scenario like this, patient volume would probably always be a factor, right? We can't control it though, right? We can't control who walks through our doors, especially not in the ED. Maybe in a, you know, a surgical department where the surgeries are, you know, by choice, maybe sometimes cosmetic, but in ED, anybody who walks through, we can't control that. So knowing that that's a factor that we can't control, how do we respond to it? Can't turn anybody away. But we have to do
Increased
it.
bed.
We have to
and
accommodate them as
staffing.
best as we can. You know, whether that means, you know, if we're gonna have patients in the hallway, how can we make it as comfortable for them as possible? I've seen situations where they've bought the patients, you know, extra pillows in the waiting room or magazines or what have you, to try to accommodate them,
Right,
because
right.
that's all they can do. They can't control the volume, so they handle things the best they can.
I've seen them where they, if they take too long in a waiting room, they would come back and try to call them back in and check their vital signs and make sure
Right.
they're interactive doing something.
Right. So we've pretty much gone through all the factors. We talked about what we would have done. I think it's important to understand that this type of things happens all the time in the EDs, where people drop the ball, the handoffs don't happen. Unfortunately, it's somewhat of a common problem. So it's key that as managers, we understand how each step, how each factor can affect a patient getting through the ED, going through the hospital so they can get out and be healthy. It's important to understand how everybody has to work together as a team,
Right.
regardless of who you like, who you don't like. At the end of the day, you go into work to provide a service. So if that means having to work on a team with somebody you don't like, you just have to do it.
Right.
You have people's lives in your hands when you're working with teams, even if you're just a registration clerk. Your contribution is necessary for the well-being of the patient. So I was hoping that this case would teach you guys, or show you guys how important working together is, how important teamwork is in a healthcare setting, regardless of if you're a resident, a measly resident, or a physician, or a tech, a patient transporter. Everybody's important on the team. Everybody's needed on the team, so their contributions are important.
I think everybody play a important role, like.
Definitely, regardless of what it is you're doing, it may seem like a trivial task. Every task is important, because at the end of the day, we don't want to have people in the hallway.
That's right.
That's how people die.
Right.
Yeah.
So, teamwork is key. It'll continue to be key always in healthcare. So hopefully, this case was a learning experience and you guys learned something and you understand why teamwork is so important. So for the next team projects, hopefully this will all transfer over and you'll understand why it's important to work together, right?
Right, maybe.
I think we went over time.
Come on, baby.
So have a good weekend.
Thank you, same to you.